My name is Claire Bradley, and I'm the Director of Irish Studies here at the International Institute of Genealogical Studies. Our website is genealogicalstudies.com, and this is the October, or the Halloween 2025 virtual meeting for the Irish course. Before we get into today's topic, does anyone have any questions or comments about current coursework? No? Okay, I'll give you another opportunity when we end the recording as well. So as you can see from my lovely hat, today we are talking about Halloween. And you may not be aware from its modern, highly commercial format that Halloween's origins are Irish. In case you don't know, it's celebrated on the 31st of October every year, which is the feast of All Hallows Eve, which is known in Irish as Oíche Thána, and it's marked the beginning of the winter season, or Samhain, in the pre-Christian calendar of Ireland. It started in Ireland, but it was our large diaspora of emigrants who spread the customs of Halloween around the world, especially to the USA, and some of them have come back to Ireland in a slightly different format than they left Ireland as well. So we will talk about that too. So just to explain, there are 4 seasons in the pre-Christian calendar in Ireland, and each was tied to some form of agricultural activity. So the first one was Imbolc, which is spelled I-M-B-O-L-C, and that was spring, when new animals are born and so on. The second one is Bealtaine, which is the summer, and then Lunasa is the autumn time, harvest and so on, and then Samhain is the winter season. These terms survive in some of the months of the year in Irish. So Bealtaine is the Irish for May, Lunasa is the Irish for August, and Samhain is the Irish for November. You may know the name Lunasa from the play by Brian Friel and the subsequent film Dancing at Lunasa, which starred Meryl Streep. After Ireland became a Christian country in the 5th century with St. Patrick and so on, some of these traditions and festivals were merged into the Christian calendar, which is a thing that happens in lots of cultures. When a new culture comes in, they try to blend with the old culture. So we saw that with the Roman Empire, they would take local festivals and holidays and they'd merge them with Roman customs and events to try and sort of bring the people together. It's a form of colonization. So, for example, Imbolc became associated with St. Bridget, who is one of Ireland's patron saints, and her feast day is celebrated on the 1st of February, which is also a public holiday in Ireland. So the night before these festivals or seasons are considered times when supernatural events can occur, and none more so than at Halloween. This is a liminal time when the veil between this world and the next is considered to be thinner, and perhaps this allows spirits to cross into the mortal world. I know this all sounds ridiculous, but if you think about Ireland in the past, even though it was a very religious country, you know, we talk about the 18th and 19th century, Irish people did very much believe in supernatural elements as well. And they would very much get involved in the spirit of these things, pardon the pun. So in both the past and the present, the main customs of Halloween in Ireland involve these things. And I'm going to talk about each one in more detail. So there's dressing up. We sprinkle holy water at doors. There's games played, especially those that can divine the future. There's always supernatural elements, and there are bonfires. And the bonfires were meant to keep the dark spirits back. So let's talk about each one of these in brief. Why do we dress up at Halloween? People at Halloween disguise themselves because there are allegedly all kinds of supernatural creatures about that night, such as banshees, fairies, and the puka. They might abduct someone. So it was thought that if you were dressed up like one of these spirits, well, then they wouldn't mistake you for a human and take you away. So when I was a child, we dressed up and we went around our neighbours' doors looking for fruit and nuts. It was a very special house that gave out chocolate or sweets or popcorn or something like that. They would make maybe Rice Krispie buns that were dipped in chocolate, something like that. But most of the time when I was a child in the 80s, it was fruit and nuts, oranges in particular, which were in season at that time of the year. I say in season, I mean imported in that season, obviously not grown in Ireland. Um, we greeted the neighbours with the phrase, help the Halloween party, when I was a child, although there are different sayings around the country, such as a penny for the puka. A puka is an Irish word for a goblin-like ghost, who can also appear as different types of animals. So we would never have said trick or treat when I was a child. The first time I ever saw that was on American films, like in E.T. there's a Halloween scene and they say trick or treat. And before that, I'd never heard that phrase before. And that seems to be a wholly American derivation for Halloween. Although Irish children do say that today. We've brought back the US cultural influences come back to Ireland in a different way. So this fear of spirits also extended to sprinkling holy water, which has been blessed at the church, on the boundaries of your house. This was to ward off spirits. And then they also might hang a jack-o'-lantern in the window to frighten off the spirits. So in Ireland, these were originally made from this up here, which in Ireland we call a turnip, but in lots of countries you would call that a swede. And I'm interested to know what do you call it? We can talk about it when we discuss at the end. But I call that a turnip, and the flesh of it is orange on the inside. And the head would be carved from that turnip. And when Irish immigrants went to North America, they couldn't get turnips. So they turned to a native vegetable, the pumpkin, and started using that instead. And there are no pumpkins. There were no pumpkins in Ireland again when I was a child. This is, as we would say in Ireland, it's far from pumpkins I was reared. And but I have to say that there is a field not 10 minutes walk from my house, which is growing them at present. So we clearly are able to grow them and you see them in the shop. So this is another custom that was morphed abroad and then has come back to Ireland in a slightly different form. And so this here is a picture of my hometown a couple of Halloweens ago where they just had a display of pumpkins out on the street, which very, very unusual. Definitely would not have seen that in the past. So there are also a lot of games associated with Halloween. So again, when I was a child, we played games. There was a lot of games that involved apples. And that's because apples are in season in October in Ireland. They've just been picked. Examples would be bobbing for apples. So there'd be fruit placed in a basin of water and you would tie your hands behind your back and you would try and grab the fruit out of the bowl with your teeth or your mouth in some way. There was another one where you would hang an apple onto a string and tie it, say, into a door frame. And again, you might be both blindfolded and your hands behind your back, and you would have to try and eat the apple off the string. And everyone then has a good laugh while they watch you do this. Remember that Ireland in the past, we didn't grow sugar. So apples would have been one of the sweet treats that you would get in around the country. We also would have had sugar from honey, but those are the sort of sweets. We didn't have sugar cane or sugar beet. So a lot of other games were about trying to divine the future, especially in relation to marriage. So different things would be baked into a fruit cake that's known as a barmbrack, and you can still buy these in shops today. And when you get them in a shop today, the main thing that you will find in them is a ring. Now, of course, it's made from some sort of plastic or cheap metal today. But the ring would symbolize that whoever found it in the cake would be the next person to get married. It was also, you did get other things in the barmbrack. You might get paper or other unpleasant things. You also might have a dream on the night of Halloween that you would see your future spouse in if you put things like a cabbage leaf under your pillow. I've no idea how that works, and I have to admit that I have not tested it. And then there was also the three saucers game, which I really like. The three saucers game, each was filled with water, clay, or a ring. and the blind, not filled with a ring, but there's a ring in the saucer. Blindfolded person is led to the saucers, and whichever they put their hand on, it divines their future. So if they put their hand in the water, it meant they were going on a long journey. So this is often thought to symbolize emigration. The clay meant death, not very literal. And then the ring, of course, meant marriage again. Um, and I have here an example of this game from the Dukas collection, the school's collection, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more in a second. This is the story of the three saucers told here by Francis Davin of Kilkenny in the 1930s. And you can see beautiful handwriting. Three saucers are got and placed on the table. Water is put on one, clay on the other, and a ring on the third. Each person is blindfolded and brought up to the table in turn. And presumably they would mix the saucers around. And the person has to put their hand in one of the saucers. If he or she puts a hand in the saucer that the clay is in, it is believed to be a sign that that person will die before next Halloween. If a person puts his or her hand in the saucer with the water in it, it's believed to be a sign that the person will emigrate before next Halloween. And if the person puts his or her hand in the saucer with the ring in it, it's believed to be a sign that the person will be married before the next Halloween. So let me take that away again. The Dukas collection is the national folklore collection of schools' children's stories. So in the 1930s, school children were asked to collect a story, a folklore story, a history story, anything they liked from an older person in their community. So they often asked a parent or a grandparent, or it might be someone else in the town or village that they lived in, and they would write it up in their very best handwriting. And the reason that it's done in this lovely handwriting is that it was being done for posterity. So each school would receive a nice book, everyone would write up their story. It would be submitted to the folklore collection, and all of these stories are now available on the Dukas website, which I'll have on a slide at the end. And it's not just stories about Halloween in it. Practically anything you can think of to do with Ireland, you will find a story written up by some child in the 1930s. There was more of a focus on rural areas than urban areas. But you can navigate by location, you can navigate by name. So you never know, you might actually find somebody who's a distant member of your family who's contributed a story to this. I actually took part in a lovely project last year in my local town where we recreated the project with local school children who are in school today. Which was really, really rewarding. But the collection is a treasure trove. And just in case you have trouble reading the lovely handwriting, nearly all of it is transcribed. And there's also stories that are written in Irish, and those have been transcribed and translated. So another thing that's relevant with Halloween is that it is a time to remember and discuss deceased family members. And in this respect, it's very similar to Mexican Day of the Dead, which is celebrated at the same time of the year, of course. And that's not something in Ireland that we would have been familiar with until very recent times, Mexico being a very far away place where there's not a lot of connection to Ireland. But it seems to me, from what I know about it, that there's a lot of similarity with it. So in Ireland, food would be left out for the dead overnight and extra fuel on the fire. We remember that the fire would be both a source of light and heat in a house in a time before electricity. And the seats closest to the fire, which were always the best seats, were always kept empty on Halloween to facilitate any deceased members who wanted to return overnight. And there's an excerpt here from another school's project. The chairs are put around the fire, the hearth is swept, and the tongs are put at the right-hand side of the fire, and snuff left on the table. It is said that the souls come back that night. They like to see the place ready for them. So snuff would have been a popular recreational activity in the past. So let's talk about some resources for this. The National Folklore Collection is at dukas.ie. And what we're going to actually do is we're going to do a demonstration of it. So hopefully this is going to work. What I'm going to do is unshare the screen for a second and bring it up on the thing, because I find sometimes that goes wrong for me and I don't have the right thing shared. So hold on one sec. Okay, now we can share again. Okay, so it's just dukas.ie and it brings you automatically into there's other things on this site, but the main thing that you're going to want to look at it is the schools collection. So we can do a search for just Halloween. And what you can see here is that it's telling you there's no results, but if you actually go to stories, then it brings up 355 results that mention Halloween. And then within these, you can filter it. So you can say, oh, show me it by a particular school. You can say, show me ones that are in English only or Irish. You can search it by the person. So if you knew that somebody in your family had actually contributed a story, you could look them up by name. We are just going to select a couple at random. And you can see here, so we get a nice bit of detail here. So the first one is the name of the school, Tonrua, and it's in Tonroe, County Mayo, and the teacher was Martine O'Gillivan, or Gibbelon even. And then it doesn't, it's down here on the right where we get the name of the person who has contributed the story. And so the collector is the person who contributed the story. Her name is Anya Nisera. And it says that her address was Ballantrader, County Mayo, and she was collecting the story from someone called Caughty Nicholas. So we don't know who she is um, in this instance, but we get the story. So here it is, and you can zoom it up if you want. So there's nice accessibility tools if you need them, but you can see here that it also is transcribed. And again, the same custom they're talking about who's getting the ring from the cake is said that the one who gets the ring will be married before the next Halloween. And then there's a crowd of girls and they put this is the bobbing for apples. So there's a throw an apple or a penny into the water and they duck into the basin to try and get the penny rather than the apple. And then this here again describing the hanging the apple from the string and they try to get it and it goes on to the next page. And it gives more details. The language in these is the language of the 1930s. Don't forget that. So again, there's another bit about putting the ring in the saucer. Everything's about marriage, apparently. But it's just lovely, lovely piece of information. And there's why not find some of these and play some of these games with your children. Here's another one. When we're going home, we go into a garden of cabbage and we pull a head of cabbage. The girl that gets a crooked stump, well, that girl will be married to a boy with a hump. The girl who gets a straight stump is supposed to be married to a straight, tall, nice man. That's lovely, isn't it? And you can see here then this is the name of the person that she's collected the story from and they've written out their name and their address. Just to note there that her name is written in the original Gaelic script, the Clo Gaelic it's called. And this script was reformed in the 1950s into the modern alphabet. So so this is what it would have looked like in the past. And it is beautiful, but I think it was the right decision to reform it because they couldn't use it as easily in typescripts and so on. So this is what the collection looked like. And then if I said, oh, well, I'm interested in this location rather than just what is about Halloween, I could go and I can see all the different stories that are contributed from this particular school. And so there's riddles. There's one that's written in Irish. And there it is transcribed into the modern day Irish there as well. And so this is a school obviously in an area where they speak Irish as well as English, local customs. And then this one covers Christmas as well. So I've done some blog posts before if you look at my blog on the Dukas collection and I've dived in and looked at different topics on it. But it comes up with lots of different things. There's lots of stuff about religion in there as well. And you can see here, I didn't even prompt, that wasn't a prompt, I just came up with religious stories just as I said that. But they would often focus on different things. And then famine times is a very common topic as well. which is a little bit sad. And so this person here, Sir Cynnig Roland, is mentioning that in her grandfather's district, only one house could afford to give food and shelter. And it mentions the name of the family. And often these ones are quite sad when you read them. So you might want to just prepare yourself for that, that it's not necessarily going to be something you're going to enjoy reading about. Let me switch back to my slides for a second. I also want to mention a couple of other books that are out there that if you're particularly interested in folklore or Irish customs. These are both books that are in current print, so you'll easily get hold of them, or might have them in the Family Search Library. An Irish Folklore Treasury by John Creedon, who's a broadcaster and journalist in Ireland, and those stories are all taken from the school's collection. So he's grouped them by themes. And then Marion McGarry's Irish Customs and Rituals, which again, quite recent book, which is done by month and by season, and talks about different customs throughout the year, which is very interesting. And just for your enjoyment, I'm putting up a mention of the Puka Festival in Trim, County Meath, which is a big sort of Halloween festival that takes place over the October bank holiday weekend. We celebrate a public holiday for October at the end of October. So it's not always on Halloween, but it's the last Monday in October. And they have lots of fun events, loads of bonfires. The bonfires, I haven't really talked about them in great detail because it is really as simple as we're going to have a big fire to hold back spirits. But you do get bonfires everywhere in Ireland on Halloween. And these days there's usually one that's put on by the local council in an attempt to stop dangerous fires that are set by amateurs or children. And there's always, warnings to not create your own bonfire if you can help it. Something to just briefly mention for a British audience is that we don't celebrate Guy Fawkes Day in Ireland, but it is a week after Halloween. And Guy Fawkes is obviously associated with bonfires as well because of the gunpowder plot to blow up the Houses of Parliament in the 17th century. We never had anything to do with that apart from the fact that Guy Fawkes was a notable Catholic, but he had no Irish connection. So it's not something that ever is remarked on here. And in recent times, Halloween has become a thing that we have again imported into England, where it was not really a thing when I was a child. So we have a little bit time left for questions and comments, and I'm hoping to hear from some people about what are your customs for Halloween that are different to ours, or do you have any of the same ones that we do? I mean, I know you have the dressing up and the going around the doors. So I'm going to stop the share screen and we can come back to the room and we can have a bit of a chat about it.
I learned a lot, Claire. Thank you very
Oh,
much. I mean, there's some that I knew already, like the turnips and stuff like that. Um, I did not realize that Samhain and in bulk and we pronounce it Beltane here, not
yes, and
Bealtaine.
that's the Scots Gaelic pronunciation, I think.
I didn't realize that was the Gaelic spelling for it.
Yeah, that so it's Irish rather than we say Irish for the language always.
Okay, Irish. Okay, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. It's a common misconception. So I always like to explain it to people when I can that we always call it Irish. But what's confusing is that the word in Irish for Irish is Gaeilge. So there is a
It's
common root there. Um,
yeah,
but it's yeah. So you would say Beltane and we would say Beltane.
yeah.
Um, do you see big festivals for that these days as well? Sort of summer festivals with people dressed up, often with a lot of makeup on their faces, sort of natural dyes and so on. Much of
hmm
that.
hmm
Uh,
I know I've seen a lot of Halloween festivals in Ireland, just looking online, and it just looks so much fun, so exciting.
yeah.
And yeah.
And in recent times, people have really started to decorate their houses and their gardens, which is, quite it's quite new. Like I see that again as something that's come back to us from America. Also for Christmas, we never would have done those sorts of things. We would have decorated the inside of our house for Christmas, but not the outside or our gardens. And nowadays, I just passed one the other day at a house that has installed a full graveyard in their garden, it seems, for Halloween. And people will no doubt go and pose beside it.
Oh,
Um,
probably. Yeah.
yeah,
We'll see big light shows and everything at
yeah,
some houses. They'll have,
yeah.
you know,
And we also do fireworks, and they're usually put on by the local councils because fireworks are actually illegal in Ireland.
yeah, we're not supposed to have them where we live either, but
Yeah. So you get a special the council can grant themselves a license for the night and they do a big fireworks display. And of
yeah.
course by this time of the year it's quite dark, by 6 o'clock, it's 5:30 here and well it's not dark yet, but it's a very dull day. But within an hour we'll really be losing the light. So in another couple of weeks, by the time we get to the 31st, it'll be pretty dark quite early. So that's one thing that I've noticed is different, that the children in Ireland go trick-or-treating in the dark on purpose. So
Hmm.
don't take them out in the daytime. It's a special treat that they're going out in the dark now, but their parents go with them, of course.
Yeah.
So my niece and nephew are small children, and they would go with their parents around their local housing estate, and then we might get a photo or something sent to us. But it doesn't happen in apartment blocks here though, I find. I live in an apartment block. No one ever calls at my door. Does that make a difference in where you are?
It does. It does. A lot of times, like in bigger cities, shopping malls will be open late
Mm-hmm.
for parents to bring their children rather than roaming around in neighborhoods. Um, where I personally live, in the exact, like just where I live, the exact spot I live, we haven't had, and I love Halloween. It's like, to me, it's just the best. And we don't get any trick-or-treaters here or anything like that. Just because we're in a darker area of town, there's no street lights or
Right.
But I know there's a lot of little communities around here where people will take their kids and they'll just do all kinds of fun stuff. The downtown in Invermere, which is the closest little town, I think there's like 3,000 people that live there. They do something on Halloween for the kids as well, but quite often you would see kids going out around 4. They'd start going out around 4, 4:30, and it's
Mm-hmm.
still quite light out. And I
Yeah.
think that's a safety thing. There's a big
Yeah.
safety thing here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do they go to school dressed up as well? Because that, again, not something that when I was a child you just wore. In Ireland, nearly every school you wear a uniform in, so we don't go in our ordinary clothes to school, and that would be very unusual. So there's a special treat at Halloween that children do in primary school up to the age of 12. They would go to school on the last day for Halloween dressed up, usually.
Sometimes I think it's up to the school and the different school districts.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
just
and
because uh, there's a lot of people that do celebrate, a lot of people that don't.
hmm
So, they try to be really politically correct about it.
right.
Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because we wouldn't see this as anything. This is just purely cultural in Ireland, and it transcends religion, color, anything, so everybody gets involved in it. So even our newer immigrant groups, their children will engage with Halloween as well because they're taught about it in school, and it's a nice thing that brings everybody together. So the Catholic Church wouldn't have been a big fan of the superstitious elements of Halloween. They would have wanted it to be more somber and serious. But they didn't always win when it came to the superstitions. That people might have been religious, but they were also afraid of the fairies. It would be totally normal in Ireland for someone to say, "Oh yeah, I'm not going into that field because there's a fairy ring in it,"
Hmm.
which is
Hmm.
like just a weird pattern in the grass that's in a ring that we've decided means there's fairies there.
It's a fairy ring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and people are like, no, couldn't cross that, couldn't cut that down. No, that's not. And then like if something bad happens, it'd be attributed to, that's the
It's
fairies,
the fairies. And I love that. I absolutely love that.
And I think,
It's
I mean, we joke about it, but I think there would be a contingent of people who would sort of believe it as well. Um, so it's all fun and games, and
mhm.
um, So we'll be bobbing for apples on the 31st, as always. Does anyone have any questions about the folklore collection? I really want to encourage you to go and look at it, because even if your ancestors left Ireland long before this was collected, the people who they were collecting it from are often 2 or 3 generations older than them. So they would be people who were alive in the 19th century, and it's their voices we're hearing, not necessarily the child's voices. So it is an absolute treasure of information that, and it's one of the areas where we talk about, as historians, we talk about history from below, which is that often in the past we learnt about the history of kings and armies and politicians and men, and history from the below is trying to look at more ordinary people and what were their lives like, and they often haven't left as much of a footprint as the politician or the king or the aristocracy. But this is a project that really did tap into that. So I'm so glad they had the foresight to do this project when they did.
It's
Uh,
beautiful. Absolutely
I
stunning.
know.
I hadn't, I know I read your blog
Mm,
and your newsletter that you put out every month. And I must have missed reading about that, or it didn't actually click because
mm.
just, so much work and this and that and the other thing. But the fact that you illustrate it and the fact that some of it's written in Irish is
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. I wish all countries or more countries had something like that because it's just priceless.
Isn't it? It's one of the great things that we did, and we were a very new nation when this happened. It was sort of 1937, 1938, 39. So Ireland was only its own country less than 20 years at that stage. So many of the people who were collecting these stories, they would have been 12 or 13, something like that. It wasn't a consistent age, but so they would have been the first generation born in an independent Ireland as well. So, and they would be talking to people who've been born in an Ireland that was part of the UK. So we get a nice juxtaposition of their life with the older person's life as well. And of
Hmm.
course, some of them could be still alive. I mean, there's plenty of people who were born in the 1920s who are still alive. So I did hear one story of somebody whose granny had contributed a story to it. And
Aw.
they knew that it was her story. So it's lovely to see. So I think we'll leave it there for today. If I'm going to turn off the recording and give everyone an opportunity to ask a question that they may not want to have on the recording. But before I do, I want to thank you for coming to today's class, which was presented by the International Institute of Genealogical Studies. And as always, you can find us on genealogicalstudies.com. Thanks for coming. I'll see you next month.